Peace be upon you, dear brothers and sisters. It all started with a dog whose actions would become a symbol of faith and loyalty that transcended boundaries, changing the lives of thousands. A dog that, unknowingly, would lead many Jews in Los Angeles to embrace Islam. It wasn't just an ordinary dog. It was a creature with a purpose that no one could have predicted. For the past several days, a video had been circulating on the internet that showed a dog in Los Angeles helping people during a time of crisis. People were in awe of the dog's extraordinary abilities and praised its owner, who had trained the dog to be of assistance when needed. The video quickly went viral, but the true depth of the story would unfold over the next few weeks in a way no one could have anticipated. The dog's remarkable act of kindness was tied to an incredible series of events that would ultimately guide thousands of people to a life-altering decision: to embrace Islam. But the story began long before anyone knew this dog's role would be anything more than a loyal companion to its owner. In Los Angeles, one of the most shocking incidents that caught everyone off guard was the fire that broke out on the very day a child was born. A 2-day-old baby, with no one understanding the significance of his arrival, found himself at the center of a tragedy. The fire had started just moments after the baby was born. For some reason, the family members believed that the child was a bad omen, associating his birth with the tragedy that had struck. In Jewish culture, there is a belief that if something good happens when a child is born, it is a blessing. If something bad happens, the child is considered cursed. This deeply rooted belief led to an atmosphere of fear and distrust surrounding the newborn. The family, despite the mother holding the baby lovingly in her arms, began to call the child unlucky. They feared that he would bring them more suffering and misfortune. The situation grew more dire as the fire worsened. The baby's mother, trying to save her child, perished in the flames. The rest of the family fled the house, leaving the child behind. Alone and helpless, the baby cried in the cradle, but no one was there to help him. No one except the dog. In the midst of the destruction and chaos, when human beings had failed the child, it was the dog who acted as a true savior. This dog, despite being injured and its legs scorched by the flames, managed to enter the house and rescue the baby. It picked the child up in its mouth, carrying him outside to safety. This heroic act left everyone who witnessed it in complete disbelief. How could a dog, a creature typically seen as impure, perform such a noble act? But that wasn't the end of the story. The dog's action became a beacon of something greater. It became a catalyst for a movement that led people to embrace faith, the faith of Islam. What followed next was even more extraordinary. As the dog's story spread, thousands of Jews in Los Angeles, moved by the dog's selflessness and courage, began to ask questions. They were inspired not just by the dog's actions, but by the lesson it imparted, the lesson of loyalty, selflessness, and faith. Soon they were seeking out mosques, asking imams to recite the Shahada for them, wanting to convert to Islam. The story that started with a dog had now become a story of faith, with thousands of lives changed forever. The dog, although seen as an animal often considered dirty and impure, had become a symbol of something much greater. What made this dog so special? The answer lay in the unexpected details that came to light. The dog wasn't just a random stray. In fact, the dog had been seen regularly on the streets of Los Angeles, always going to the same place at a specific time. What was it doing there? The answer stunned many. Investigations revealed that the dog had been visiting a cemetery where its owner had been buried. The dog would visit the grave every day, bringing 3 specific flowers, red, white, and yellow, from a nearby garden. It would place these flowers on the grave of its owner. When asked about this ritual, a relative shared the details. The owner had told the dog that if he passed away, the dog was to place 3 flowers on his grave, each of a different color, symbolizing the connection between them even after death. But the most shocking revelation came when it was learned that the dog's owner was Muslim. The dog, with its unspoken devotion, had been following the wishes of its Muslim owner, who had passed away a couple of months ago. This act of loyalty was so profound that it transcended everything people knew about animals. The dog wasn't just an animal, it was a living testament to the values of loyalty, faith, and respect for its owner. Every time the call to prayer, the adhan, echoed through the city, the dog would run toward the mosque. It wasn't allowed inside, but it would sit outside, listening to the prayer and watching the worshipers. It was as though the dog knew the significance of the moment, understanding the sacredness of the call to prayer. The dog's actions weren't limited to simply sitting and listening, though. On several occasions, the dog had prevented thieves from entering the mosque, stopping them from carrying out their plans. How did the dog know they were thieves? How could it distinguish between genuine believers and imposters? Some said it was the scent, that the dog could somehow sense the difference between true Muslims and those who were pretending. The dog's story didn't just affect people who saw its actions directly. It had a ripple effect, spreading to those who hadn't even heard of the dog initially. The more people learned about the dog's incredible faithfulness, the more they began to question their own beliefs. But there was more. The dog's connection to the Quran was undeniable. Every time it heard the Quran being recited, it would stop and listen. In fact, some claimed that the dog would even repeat certain verses in its own language, as though it were partaking in the sacredness of the words. Was this a miracle? Or was it simply the power of the Quran that had such an effect on this humble creature? The question hung in the air. One of the most remarkable instances came when the dog was seen working alongside rescue workers who were clearing debris after the fire. The workers, tired and hungry, noticed that the dog didn't even attempt to eat the food placed in front of it. As they began eating, the dog hesitated. But then, just as the food was within reach, the call to prayer rang out. The dog, instead of eating, ran toward the mosque. The workers, confused but intrigued, followed the dog, wondering what it was doing. The dog didn't stop until it reached the mosque, where it sat down, watching the prayer take place. The workers were left in awe. Here was a creature, not human, yet displaying more devotion than many could ever hope to possess. The dog's actions were a reminder that devotion to faith is not bound by human limitations. It was as though the dog understood something that many people had not yet grasped: the importance of following the path of faith and loyalty, no matter the circumstances. As the prayer continued inside the mosque, the dog sat quietly outside, waiting. When the prayer ended, the dog returned to the food, but it had already left an indelible mark on the people who had witnessed its actions. It wasn't just the dog's story that had touched their hearts, but the deeper message that it carried. Loyalty, faith, and devotion could come from the most unexpected places. This was the moment that changed everything. Inspired by the dog's selflessness and loyalty, many people, including Jews who had been skeptical of Islam, found themselves drawn to the religion. They sought out the mosques, eager to learn about the faith that had led the dog to act in such a way. They wanted to embrace Islam, to be part of the same faith that had inspired such devotion in an animal. The dog's actions had led them to Islam, and in doing so, it had bridged the gap between cultures, religions, and people. It showed that sometimes the most profound lessons come not from the most obvious sources, but from the unexpected, the humble, and the loyal. And so in Los Angeles, a dog, through its simple yet extraordinary actions, had shown thousands the way, leading them to Islam and reminding them of the importance of loyalty, faith, and devotion. It had made believers out of non-believers, simply by being itself. In the end, it wasn't just a dog, it was a miracle in disguise.